to the SEG Europe Regional Advisory Committee's webinar series, A State of the Energy Industry in Europe. Dr. Adriana Ramirez, Chair of the SEG Europe Regional Advisory Committee, and myself, Lori Whitesell, will serve as your host for today's webinar. Before we begin, the model for this webinar will be a conversation on leadership perspectives in an evolving energy landscape between Adriana and our guest, Lisa Rebora. After the conversation, we will open up questions. You can ask questions by placing your questions in the Q&A question box at the bottom of your screen. If you'd like to ask questions directly, please raise your hand in the webinar interface, and I will adjust your settings to allow you to ask your questions to the presenter. Alternatively, you can also enter questions in the chat, as some of you have already found. Lisa Rebora joined the industry in the mid-1990s after graduating with a Master's of Science degree in Petroleum Geosciences and Geology from Imperial College. She began her career at Schlumberger, working in seismic acquisition and processing. She then moved to ARCO and its U.S. subsidiary, Vastar Resources, working as an exploration geophysicist in the central North Sea, and then on to the Gulf of Mexico shelf and deepwater. In 2000, she joined BP as Development Geoscientist in the early appraisal and development of blocks 15, 17, and 18 in the Angola Congo Basin. In 2004, she and her family moved to Cairo with BP, where she spent 5 years exploring the West Nile Delta. In 2009, she moved to Statoil, which is now Equinor, which is based in Norway and also in London. She has worked both international new ventures and licenses in several advisory and leadership roles, including exploration manager of Nicaragua, Colombia, and vice president regional exploration for the Southern Hemisphere. She was until recently head of sustainability and strategy for Equinor's exploration portfolio, and is currently heading up the Exploration Excellence Unit as Senior Vice President, in addition to her roles as strategy lead for exploration. Lisa lives in London with her husband, 3 daughters, and enjoys traveling, tennis, and good food. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome both Adriana and Lisa to begin their conversations and share their thoughts with us today.
Hi, I am Adriana Ramirez. I'm the chair of the SEG Europe Regional Advisory Committee. Today I'm having a conversation with you, Lisa. You have 2 hats today. You are the Senior Vice President of Exploration Excellence and the Strategy Lead for Exploration at Equinor. I would like to talk about that, and we will talk about leadership, sustainability, geopolitics, training. But before we start, I'd like you to tell me a little bit about you, about what motivates you and who you are.
Okay. Thanks, Adriana. Thanks for the invitation to the SEG. And I guess I should start at the beginning. So me, I grew up in Lancashire in the north of England. I spent a lot of time outdoors as a child. I think my father was a big inspiration. We built our home to be close to nature, and I think I learned how to respect and care about the environment around me. I was fascinated by maps, actually. I would pore over atlases, and I think I just knew I had that travel bug inside me. And I guess the interest in geography developed into geology, like most of my colleagues and friends. And I was hooked. I mean, once I'd found geology, I had no doubt in my mind that's what I wanted to do. And I think this is one of those careers where you can really combine those 2 passions together, the travel, the geosciences. And I've been able to travel and live abroad with my family and work on some fantastic projects so far. So I guess it's 25 years in the career in the industry almost, and I'm looking forward to the next couple.
25 years. So in those 25 years, you have seen a lot of changes in this industry, ups and downs, rebranding of the industry itself. Perhaps, very likely, at the beginning of your career, big oil was big oil, oil and gas companies, service companies for the oil industry.
Yeah.
And I believe it's around the 2000s when this industry rebranded themselves as energy organizations, integrated energy companies.
Yeah.
Do you think that was just a rebranding to get a better image, or what are your thoughts around this in the transition in the industry?
Yeah. Well, I guess the transition has been underway for quite some time, and you'll know that in Equinor we recently changed our name from Statoil, and that's with a big heritage and decades of experience working oil and gas in the Norwegian continental shelf primarily and internationally. I think, you know, the oil and gas part is still very core and vital to what we do, and will continue to be so. There's a huge focus on really finding and exploring for the highest quality resources, and those are the ones that have the lowest carbon footprint. So we're applying that kind of low carbon approach into how we explore and where we explore. And then in parallel, working the renewable space. We're scaling in our offshore wind ventures, solar, and I guess the third pillar of that kind of broad energy company, if you like, is just on the decarbonisation agenda, and there's projects in CCS in carbon capture and storage. There's projects in hydrogen, for example, converting from natural gas. So we're exploring and working on several avenues, and I guess they're all about meeting the future demand going forward, and there's no doubt that there's significant demand with the growing population and emerging economies. So yeah, it's about delivering that to the world, to the market.
When it comes to big energy organizations, if we think about the Paris Agreement, it has had an effect. What is your view on how should we lead? Yeah.
That's a good question, because I think the first step is to really acknowledge that there's a man-made impact on climate change, and I guess we all play a role and can shape and influence that to some extent. There's certainly a place, I think, for big companies like ourselves to address that, and we are. But I think we can also, I think we need to be vocal and engage. You know, be out there and debate and constructively work together on finding the solutions. And we've started that journey, but I think there's still a lot more we can do going forward.
You have had a very technical career in several countries, several projects worldwide, but then you had a side move. You went into sustainability.
Yeah.
How did that shape you as a leader?
Yeah, so that was not that long ago, a few years ago. I was asked to lead our sustainability and safety group in exploration. I knew, and I was quite passionate about the sustainability agenda. I think we could see that it's becoming increasingly important. At that time, all of the different businesses were working together on how we could collectively reduce emissions in our value chain. So it was really good to be part of that, especially in the early part of the value chain. also, I think we had scaled up our operations and our activities globally. So there were many new countries we just accessed. And going back to the beginning, that really appealed to my sense of learning about different cultures and how we can work together. So yeah, I stepped into a very different role, and I guess what I realized in that was I had a lot of kind of transferable skills I could bring. I don't think we recognize just, you know, how much we learn as geoscientists that go above and beyond simply the subsurface, and you know, how we run safe and smooth operations in some fairly complicated environments and far-flung places around the world. There's a lot you can bring to doing that in a responsible way. And I guess your question on the leadership side, I think I had to be quite humble moving into that role, because I was not the expert, and thankfully I was surrounded by some extremely smart sustainability
I like how you mentioned the word humbleness, or humble.
Yeah.
It's not quite often that a leader will say that that was key in their development.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely key. Yeah, and I think you have to trust the people around you, but asking the right questions and setting clear direction. I think you play to each other's strengths as well. I think when you've got different backgrounds and different experience, you make better decisions, you make better recommendations. So it was a fantastic role. I'm really glad I did that, and it influences how I do the rest of my leadership roles, you know.
So let's dive a little bit more into that. After your time in sustainability, you moved into your current position.
Yeah.
Exploration excellence. Can you say something about it?
Yeah, so excellence covers a broad range of disciplines and teams that work alongside our assets and our regional clusters. We cover everything from seismic, acquisition and processing, imaging, support with interpretation, well planning for our exploration drilling portfolio, digital, and then we have the specialists, the kind of deep domain specialists that provide input and support in the decisions as we mature licenses to drill ready.
And in your new role, you have been part and you have led a reorganization. Was that, you know, reorganizations can be seen from two viewpoints. One could be as a statement of I'm the new leader, I'm reorganizing. But did you have a purpose?
Yeah, I think, I mean, there wasn't radical changes, but I wanted to place emphasis on how strategic the role of exploration excellence could be, because I think in big companies, for those individuals that work across the portfolio and see many projects, there's a huge amount of insight you can draw from that, and that insight and how you apply that knowledge elsewhere. I really wanted to put some focus on that and build on the strength and knowledge we had there.
Okay, can you give me an example of what you're trying to achieve in this new organization? I mean, I know we just finished a long downturn that reshaped especially the service industry, and that has an effect on your organization. Yeah.
So I guess how we work alongside the assets and the portfolio that's evolving through time. I guess after the downturn, one of the important aspects has been to really create a much more resilient portfolio. kind of diversify your risk, and we recognise that scaling up our presence in the onshore was an important step. We're of course working Brazil and have a fairly large footprint there, and you know, as we've been working the Norwegian and UK and the North Sea, transitioning into carbonate portfolio and onshore portfolio, I think those kind of three very general buckets of reservoir systems, they bring the need for expertise and you know, building competence across the organisation. So I think we can play a role there. And then I also see kind of the culture that we're driving at, and we talk about new ways of working, but I think it's just better ways of working, and there's no doubt this kind of razor sharp focus on efficiency now. I think that downturn really instilled a lot of discipline around that, but there's a lot of aspects to agile ways of working and more integration and collaboration, bringing multidisciplinary teams together, working in kind of sprints, or these short pulses, to come up with new ideas or test them and park them and move on. And I think there's certain areas of exploration where you can apply those concepts really well. So yeah, we need to test and try new ways, and more importantly, better ways of working.
You mentioned culture and speed. We are in a transition. We have mentioned the downturn, we have mentioned the disruption in the service industry.
Yeah.
And you started touching upon digitalization, automation, efficiency that we're trying to get at. How do you lead in this fast-paced world where we communicate in a very detached way? We use phones and emails that are very personal. You cannot really always tell intent or feelings out of it. And it's not always easy to know how people will read you. And we have meetings all the time, video conferences, webinars. How do you lead in this fast-paced world, in this transition?
Yeah, I think things are moving very quickly right now. And communication and getting your message across is as important as it's ever been. Interestingly, I find I'm using email less and less. I mean, personally, I find when I am face-to-face or on video, I mean, just communicating as naturally as I can, picking up the old-fashioned phone, that works much better as a leader. I think it's important you convey not only what you intend, but how you intend it as well. So communication's changing, but things are getting faster. I guess externally, news spreads, and it's not always good news. So on that side, for leaders, I think we have to be a lot more nimble, and we have to just be able to navigate that kind of complexity better. And I mean, it's not good enough to wait for the bad news and react and stand up only on those occasions, but being a bit more proactive, and I think being proud to share stories about the positive things we can impact as an industry. We don't do that enough.
That's interesting, because the truth is we are in an industry that has a bad image, unfortunately, and bad news spread really fast. A tweet, a photo can be misinterpreted or can be correctly interpreted. But usually I feel we are in a very reactive mode. On the other hand, big corporations can have also a positive impact. And I think that's more or less what you were hinting at. Can you elaborate more?
Yeah, I think big companies play an important role because, I mean, you see geopolitically how things are shifting right now. Much more populism, sometimes very inward-looking, I would say. And how do we kind of how do we reach out and collaborate? And I know myself and you too, Adriana, we've worked internationally. We work on some really complicated projects, big projects that require we work from all levels, whether it's kind of local government or you know, communities or technical people in the field. There's a vast kind of array of stakeholders out there, and I don't think we should undermine the experience we have on that front. And one more point I make, I think, you know, big companies are a lot more financially robust, and how we exercise that, you know, I think we're a bit more tolerant of risk, and you know, we can invest in technology and innovation, and that can accelerate and improve a country and the impact.
So you think that because in the past discovering oil meant wealth, and at the beginning of times it actually meant environmental problems, because finding oil was this huge splash of black liquid that actually contaminated around it. We have now the technology to do much better than that, but we are also having a lot of publicity towards reducing hydrocarbons. So what I'm trying to get at is if you believe that the oil industry can still have the possibility of changing the reality of a country. Thinking about Norway, your experience in Norway, your experience in the UK, your experience in Egypt.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of positive impacts to society, and you see that in Norway over 5 decades, how important that's been. But especially when you're entering a new and emerging country, you know, the impact you can have on kind of building the skills, building the education, and the infrastructure. I mean, it's not to be taken lightly how positive those benefits can be, and you know, the social values you bring. I think wherever we work, you know, being open and transparent and listening to your partners is important, and working together so that, you know, finding and developing energy, it's a mutually beneficial exercise for each party.
You have, again, an international career, and I know you have talked in other occasions about diversity. Is this something you want to share with us? Some of your thoughts about this?
Yeah, we can do that. I think you and I have talked about this topic before, and we have spent more time focusing on the inclusion part, because for me it's not about race or gender or religion. I think inclusion just cuts through all of that, and it should. It's I think recognizing, first of all, that we all have biases, we all have preferences, but I think trying to operate, especially as a leader, without boundaries, and respecting individuals. I know that we all spend, you know, a big chunk of our precious lifetime at work, and it's important that people come here and they feel they can be who they are, and they're acknowledged for what they bring to the table. They feel heard, they feel they can contribute and have an impact. So for me, inclusion is more about that, and the values that you all have in common.
But do you think it is good to have? It is this diversity is something that is nice to have. It's something that is necessary nowadays.
No, I think it's important. It's crucial we have diversity. There's no doubt. All the research shows that different minds, diverse experience around the table makes us better decision makers, and actually makes us perform better. So there's no reason why the workplace shouldn't reflect, you know, what the cross-section of society looks like out there. And we have a way to go, but I think we're getting there, and we're on the right path, and we're spending a lot of time and effort, quite rightly, on this topic right now as an industry.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's another topic that has been long talked about, and that's again digitalization. As an equalizer, as everybody having access to information, big data.
Yeah.
And there's always a debate whether or not the oil industry, the energy industry, whether we are digital already,
yeah,
or whether we are about to get there or getting there. Where are we?
Yeah, we are well on the journey. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, I mean, we have grown up with a huge amount of data, and I think we shouldn't underestimate just how good we are at working with all this different data and interrogating that data. But it's taken a lot of time to get that data into a shape, a condition where we think we can trust it and exploit it to the maximum. So yeah, right now I have no doubt we're just scratching the surface and only using a very small part of all the data we acquire. So that's the opportunity. I think.
How is this going to impact your work environment? How does this impact attracting new talents?
Yeah, I think there's an exciting career here, just on the data side alone. But what's really interesting is how you combine the data with the geoscience. I think those are skills we're really trying to hone and build in the future. There's you know, there's 100 years of exploration and subsurface data out there. There's a lot of companies that have merged and been bought, and tapping into all of that data, that knowledge, that insight is the first step. And figuring out, yeah, you know, I think the data, just getting the data in a place that it's accessible, it's usable, we can learn from machines, we can use artificial intelligence. We're just, again, you know, the tip of the iceberg, but
yes.
I'm looking forward to just the next few years in that space.
Yeah, it's funny, or not funny, that's the incorrect word, but we do have a lot of data, more than 100 years, but we're not very good at having that data organized, and that's probably one of the biggest challenges that I see in this transition moving forward. What other challenges do you see? What other?
Yeah. Well, I guess just going back to the digital, I think in terms of training and developing ourselves, I think as a leader we play a really important role on that front, and I think we need to be curious, we need to be adaptable, and I think we individually need to drive our development, but as a leader as well, I think we can stretch our people in different ways, and you know, myself having worked in completely different areas than purely technical, that brings a completely different dimension to how you think and how you lead. So I would encourage that we test and test ourselves and try different jobs within the energy space. There's a lot of opportunity there. So it's not a challenge. I think that's actually an opportunity, and I think most people I work with, they're really interested to continuously develop themselves. And maybe a bigger challenge, though, is just how we're perceived externally. You touched on it earlier, and just that societal expectation that we face today. It's growing ever more loud, and I go back to being more proactive in communicating externally and talking about what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. And I think individually we all need to be ambassadors, and actually as an industry we need to work together on this front. I think solidarity and reaching out and being part of that public debate is very important.
So collaboration across the industry would also matter in terms of the image that we have.
Yeah, I do.
And
think
attracting
so.
new people.
Yeah, attracting new people is a risk we run if we're not stepping up and discussing these challenges, because we're never going to solve them individually. We have to work together on this. And I think, as I mentioned, a career in this industry for decades is going to offer a lot of opportunity to work on many different aspects. You could join the company as a geologist and work in exploration or in CCS or in renewables. You could work onshore, offshore. I mean, there's just a world of opportunities there. So I think sharing that kind of career opportunity with the younger generation is even more important now than it ever was.
You have 3 kids. What would you tell them if they said they wanted to join this industry?
Yeah, I'd be delighted, first of all. I'm not sure
you like it that much.
Yeah, two geophysicists or geologists in the family. Yeah, they might choose to go their own path, and I totally respect that. But no, I think I've had a great career, and I think there's opportunities for decades to come. So I'd be over the moon if that's what they wanted to do. I think one thing I do realise as they grow is, children start to develop their role models much earlier today than they ever did in the past, and that's no doubt kind of social media. So I think we need to reach out earlier and tell children about the careers in science, in technology, in engineering, what they can do, because it's not always the most kind of visible career path, and it wasn't to me until I was, reaching mid to late teens. So telling those stories early, being role models, yeah, we can all do something on that front.
Thank you, Lisa. I just have one more question before we open for the audience.
Yeah.
As a leader, what are the values that drive you?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, it's you need to be extremely passionate about what you do. I think that energy translates and inspires others, and be very clear about what your purpose is, what you're trying to achieve, and why you're trying to do that. I think now more than ever as an industry, we have to be transparent and very open and honest about our activities, and those are crucial. But I guess also one of our values is caring, and that applies not only to, you know, running safe operations, but it's about taking care of people. It's about making sure everyone comes home safe at the end of the day, and kind of nurturing well-being. So those are values that are important to me, and yeah, I hope I can live and breathe that. And I think unless you're really true to those, it's something you just can't fake.
So it goes back to that authenticity that you mentioned before.
Yeah, yeah, I hope so.
Well, thank you very much. We'll open up for questions.
Okay, we actually have a question that was entered into the Q&A box earlier. And so the question is, as a leader with an international background, how do you see the impacts of different cultures? How does it affect you when you move from one culture to the next? And how do you deal with the changes and the challenges?
So yeah, I mean, we have moved around quite a few times as a family, and I mean, personally, I think that really helps you grow as an individual. It's good that for me and my family, you see how different parts of the world operate, and some of the challenges they face. I love working with new people. I really appreciate that kind of diversity of thought and the experiences they bring to the table. I guess that's what appeals to me most in working as an international company, because I'm surrounded by different nationalities and different cultures. Yeah, it's kind of what makes me tick, I think. Yes. And I think it's what makes companies like ourselves successful. So yeah, it's important. It's good for the experience, but it helps us perform even better.
Okay, we have another question. And it says, you mentioned the importance of diversity and inclusion. How do you, as a leader, deal with the paradox of diversity management and talent management? And the reason they say a paradox is because diversity management aims to foster work environments in which every employee can realize their potential in order to add value, and talent management is concerned with the development of high-performing employees in order to sustain the organization's competitive advancement. Therefore, diversity management is inclusive and talent management by default is exclusive. How can leaders determine the proper allocation of resources for training and development, developing both elites and non-elites? And I guess as I read that, personally, I don't know if talent management is by default exclusive, first of all. And then I'll let you move forward in that.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for the question. Thanks, Laurie. I tend to agree with you, Laurie. It doesn't have to be exclusive, but I genuinely see we need to be very aware of the talents we select and making sure we're being diverse in the makeup of that talent pool. So, ensuring you've got a pool of different backgrounds to develop in the future, that's important, but they're not necessarily exclusive for me. I mean, a talent can come from any background, as long as leaders you're aware and you make sure you're broad in those talents you select.
Maybe that can also be connected to coaching and mentoring. Yeah, a person that might not be seen as a very talented person might just need some help,
some extra support. Yeah, That's a good point, Adriana. I think we probably spend a lot of our time, especially as leaders, coaching and mentoring. And I find that when you do that informally and on a regular basis with people, it can make a real difference. I mean, it doesn't have to be a very formal mentor meeting at, you know, periodic stages, but just casually and supporting people in that way can nurture talent.
Yeah, I think so, because I mean, you and I have had mentors, and sometimes a mentor is just a person that, not just, but it's a person that randomly says something to you that motivates you, makes you think.
Yeah, and gives you feedback.
Exactly.
Yeah, and gives you suggestions on how you can be better or how you could do things differently. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Another question, and it's kind of broad in its two-part. What, as a leader, was one of your most difficult leadership experiences? And conversely, what was one of the best or most rewarding leadership experience? It's probably hard to pick just one, but.
Wow, good question. Yeah, I think honestly, as a leader with a family and dual careers, it can be challenging to find the right balance, and that's something I think can apply to both men and women, to mothers and fathers, but we constantly have to juggle and prioritize. I think just recognizing that is a challenge for many of our leaders, and supporting them as best you can on that front. The best moments, I mean, it has to be finding hydrocarbons. And more than that, I think it's just working in teams and building on each other's ideas, building on each other's strengths, challenging one another, but actually seeing your interpretation and your ideas tested by the well bit. I mean, that's the ultimate. Yeah,
that's the real answer.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. We have another question, and it has to do with your leadership dealing with teams. How do you deal or manage perhaps team members that come at a problem in a starkly different way than most traditional or the herd would normally approach a problem? Because sometimes those individuals that look at a challenge differently can add quite a bit to a team. But how would you manage them, because they don't normally conform well with the group?
Yeah. I guess in big organizations, you're going to find a whole variety of different personalities and different working styles. And I think that's what's actually really interesting as a leader, because figuring out how you can make sure everyone contributes and is able to share their ideas, to do it respectfully. I'm happy that not everyone conforms and thinks the same way, but we do need to make sure that those that behave different or interact in a different way, I think leaders play a big role there on making sure you can bring out the best of those, and you know, be tolerant, and be a role model for others in how you treat and encourage that diversity.
Thank you. Also, there's a question that goes back to the beginning of your discussion, where you were laying the foundation of your career, where you built, your family built a house in the country, and you enjoyed and fell in love with nature. And once you found geology, you were pretty much hooked. And so the question is, were you always interested in oil and gas with respect to geology, or were there different areas within geology, the geoscience disciplines, that you also were perhaps more passionate about, like maybe mineralogy or stratigraphy or something like that?
Yeah. I guess petroleum really evolved from my interest in sedimentology. I guess in university, that was, at least as an undergraduate, that was one of the most interesting areas, sedimentology, stratigraphy, structural. So it just naturally seemed to play to those skills and those interests. I didn't consider pursuing a career in other aspects of geology. I know many of my friends did. Some went on to study environmental geology. Some went on into mining, but interestingly, I never considered another path.
Okay, thank you. We have one more. Aside from the disciplines of geology and geophysics, what other skill set do you think would be most useful or valuable to someone entering the industry today?
Good question. I see today that, you know, we have a lot of specialists in our industry, but those specialists work best when they've got a few more strings to their bow. So I think communication is critical. Just how you articulate your ideas, how you work with others in a team. Without a doubt, digital and data is going to become ever more important, but I'm not sure that's such a challenge for the new generation. It's just something they've grown up with. And then I think just that business awareness, that commercial understanding, that helps understand the impact of the recommendations that you're coming forward with. So yeah, communication and creativity and digital and commercial skills, those are all really important. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We have time for one more question, and we actually have one here, and then I'll turn it back to Adriana to maybe say the last question that she might have in her mind.
That's great.
Okay. According to the United Nations Statistics Division, 2011, the 9 billion population that is expected in the year 2050 will likely require 50% more energy than the Earth's current 7 billion inhabitants. Do you foresee all this energy coming from renewables, or what perhaps a breakup or makeup do you envision?
Yeah, I think that demand is huge going forward, and in any scenario that we map out in whether it's our own energy perspectives or the World Economic Forum, there's going to be significant demand just to meet that population growth, as you mentioned. And I don't think that's going to be met by renewables alone. I think we are going to need a broad energy mix, and depending on where you are in the world, you know, using the natural resources that are available in the most responsible way is important. So there will be I mean, there's no doubt there's going to be some disruption and displacement of our products. That's going to happen with innovation, and that's great. But there's still a place for oil and gas, I see, in the future. But it has to be those resources that are have the lowest carbon footprint and require the least energy in to get the most energy out. So it will need to be a broad energy mix, and we'll have to continue investing to build the renewables to decarbonize as far as we can. I think that's the challenge that energizes me most. Yeah.
Okay. Well, while you were talking, another question came in, so I'd like to see if we can answer that, and then I'll turn it over to Adriana. And I think we've addressed this question a little bit, and so I think the question is trying to maybe focus the question on specifically, in your opinion, about geophysics, a geophysics career today. What skill must a geophysicist have to work at a company? So I guess what skill would be the primary skill, if possibly, if we digest it down to that, must the geophysicist have today?
So specific to geophysics.
Yep.
So, I mean, it kind of depends on what kind of application you're looking at for that, what kind of sphere of work. My experience is those geophysicists that have worked in different parts of the value chain, whether it's kind of exploration, development, or production, having a much more holistic view on geophysics, from acquisition and processing right through to the interpretation and the delivery of either a prospect or a new target for a well location. So I think I'd encourage, as far as possible, that you take a broad approach and work in many different projects in different stages of the upstream. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Adriana for the final question, and then we'll just close from there.
Yes. Actually, I have two questions.
Okay.
The first one is, I mean, you speak very passionately about geology, about this industry, about geophysics, about finding oil. And now you are in a much more high-level position, strategy. You are the Senior Vice President, again, for Exploration Excellence, highly technical.
Yeah.
Do you ever miss your technical side?
Do you know what? I can get my fix on the technical side whenever I need. I just need to walk along the corridors and sit with the people who work with me. If I need that fix, it's easy to sort out. But I really enjoy the leadership. I think I enjoy energizing people and helping them deliver their best and work on some really interesting projects. So yeah, to that one.
That's very good. Well, I don't have a final question, but maybe you have some final thoughts you want to punchline for this webinar.
Yeah.
And then we say goodbye and thank you.
Yeah. Well, I guess we started out talking about what it is to lead in an energy transition. I think we're all in the midst of a lot of change, both external and internal to our industry. So I think just navigating that complexity and not allowing it to overwhelm us and inhibit us. I think we are very much part of the future of energy and can shape that going forward. So there's a great career, not just for ourselves, but for the next generation coming into this industry. And we need to continue to attract those people. Yeah, so I think I should end it there.
So the future is bright.
The future is definitely bright. Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa. And thank you, Laurie.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Adriana, for a lovely conversation. Thank you, everyone, for attending the SEG Europe Regional Advisory Committee's webinar as part of our webinar series, State of the Energy Industry in Europe. Please look forward to social media posts to register for next month's interesting presentation. Thank you again for attending today, and thank you very much, Lisa, for your time.